Ding.
No, that means we're live with me on the phone, and I can hear Mike through Tony's phone call to me, which is hilariously funny. And Mike can hear me through Tony's phone call, which is hilariously funny. I think Tony needs hearing aids. I know a person who was our guest like 2 months ago.
All right, I tried to plug in a speaker to my Max box, but apparently there's some separate settings you have to go through, so I won't have enough time to do that.
Okay.
All right. Mike, try talking for a second. I want to hear if I can hear you.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
I can hear you. You're testing 1 2 3. It's light, but I can make you out.
Okay, that's weird. Do you know anything about why that would be, Jeff?
It could be that the settings coming out from him could be a bit low.
Yeah, I just maxed them all the way out, and it's better, but it's not where I'd like it to be. Like Mike, with you on speaker, I feel like you're in the weather center with me, or Jeff, excuse me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that a Blackhawks jersey you're wearing, by the way, Mike?
No, Calgary Flames.
Okay, gotcha. It's cool, baby.
You've already made the co-host angry.
He doesn't look angry to me.
If you said it was an Edmonton Oilers jersey.
Thankfully, they are completely different, so that's kind of obvious. You can easily tell the difference.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we're live, so all that excitement was live to people watching.
Fabulous.
Never a dull moment, right, guys?
Yep.
Not really.
I have a control room button. What happens if I click it?
You could try it. I already did. That's why I bumped everybody's sound up. Except Tony's, because I don't think Tony wants to... we don't want to hear... We already can hear Tony fine.
Yeah. Okay. I clicked the button that gave me a message, and I clicked OK, and it went right back to where we were before. So that doesn't do me any good.
A little tour here, okay? So
Sweet.
We have a little Mac setup here. We have a couple PCs, and I'm going to walk you through if I can.
Look at that. He's showing temperatures that are much warmer than it is here.
These were our morning lows today, by the way, guys. 39 Ocala. They're normally our cold spot. And, of course, Cocoa Beach, Melbourne, they're the warm spot. And then these were our highs today. And keep in mind, the average high temperature in Orlando this time of the year is right about 71. So that was cold for us. So we're going to watch this one. I don't think the computer models are handling this particular feature very well over the next couple of days for the Southeast. So we'll have to watch that. And then we've got a rocket launch. That's one of the things we do down here in Central Florida is we cover a lot of SpaceX and shuttle launches when we had that. But SpaceX has got a Falcon 9 rocket that's going to go up at 4:47 in the morning. 80% go, 20% no go. We're just going to have to watch the clouds and that trough offshore. And then a little fly through there for you. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's our wind chills, not to make you guys laugh, 32 to 38. That's the big talk.
Wow. I didn't know they even counted wind chills unless it was below 40.
I think it's going to be below 40.
Gotta get that feature rotating back in over the weekend, guys.
Oh, he has to show.
You guys golf?
He has to show those nice temperatures that I won't see until like March or April.
So there's the launch forecast. And then you guys run?
No.
No.
Except for the fact that up here in the winter, when you want to get somewhere from the car to a warm place, you run.
Yeah.
And then here's our 7
Been
then.
that way here lately. 77.
Yeah, I'll have 77 in May.
We have
Hey, yeah.
big weather wall over there, and then another pod right about there. So the Hearst newsroom back in there, out that way. So,
See, this is what it's like at the big market stations.
well, we're not complaining. Let's just put it that way. We're happy.
So then Hearst is going to find out, which is Tony's employer, is going to find out that he has it too well, and he's going to get transferred to KCCI in Des Moines.
They do pretty good up there. John does a nice job.
Yeah, all they complained about with, for example, since you did current weather, we'll do that first. It's cold here. We had another blizzard.
Mhm.
Yeah, we showed some of that video tonight, actually.
Yeah, because they closed the interstate between Ames and Clear Lake, which they always do during really bad windstorms, and because it hardly snowed yesterday. We only had like less than half an inch or an inch.
Yes.
But you get winds gusting in a blizzard to severe thunderstorm warning criteria.
Right.
That says, yeah, I think we need to close the roads and issue blizzard warnings.
Yeah.
The winds didn't get that bad here in my part of the state, in the eastern part of Iowa. We had winds getting close to 50, but it was at or over 60 in the northern part of the state.
That's amazing. Yep.
And seeing all the snow, because I noticed that today when I was driving, because I took my mother's car to get the oil change today. So you drive there, all the fields, all the snow is gone. Most of the snow is gone from the fields because now it's all in the ditches, 6 feet high in the ditches. So,
Yeah.
but
6 feet.
But today here, it was about 5 above zero. Wind chill was about 10, 15, 20 below. I'm under a wind chill advisory. And I know this, Henry, who would normally be on here too, but he's busy this time of the year,
Yep.
says that it seems like wind chill warnings, or wind chill advisories, I should say, are a dime a dozen now because they seemingly issue them all the time. And
Well,
I'm thinking, it'll be like severe thunderstorm warnings. People won't pay attention to them soon because they're just commonplace here now, even though wind chill advisories, they only issue them if it's 20 below or lower.
Yeah. Well, you know, the toughest thing that we battle with, guys, even in our own market, not that we get the wind chills like you guys do, we have such a large market. You know, you're dealing with 3 different weather service offices, and the criteria is different for all 3 of them. So you got to kind of meld the 3 together.
Is that, for like example, like Tampa is different than, say, Melbourne or, say, Jacksonville?
That's exactly right. You nailed it right on the head.
Wow. Good work, Jeff.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so by those who may not know who we're speaking with, because we're a good 10 minutes in and we haven't even discussed who this person is. It could be Godzilla. Who knows? Our guest this evening is Tony Minolfi. If I said that right, and if I didn't, you can correct it. Okay. He is the chief meteorologist for WESH in Orlando, Florida, and we're complaining that he's in Orlando and he should be somewhere else, like anywhere else except Orlando.
Yep.
But,
Come down to Disney.
well, and it's interesting. I could go to the local airport here, and there's flights to Orlando. Everybody just wants to get the heck out of here.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing how much traffic we have come through, especially the last 2 weeks of the year and the beginning first 2 weeks of the new year. Every year, that 4-week stretch, we have close to 5 million folks come through those turnstiles at OIA.
You know.
Wow.
So, our guest has been at WESH for, gosh, how long? 8 years? 7?
It'll be 10 in May.
Okay, 10, but you've only been chief for 7 of them?
Yep. That's right. That's right.
Where you replaced, is it Dave Marsh?
Correct.
Okay, who had been there since like the dawn of television or something like that.
Well, a little bit of history for you about WESH. Every chief that's been here has been tenured for about 30 to 35 years. So, I'm only the 3rd chief in this location. I'd like to keep that trend going that way.
Yeah, well, and before that, we'll say before that, you were in West Virginia.
That is a difficult place to forecast.
That would be Charleston, West Virginia.
Right, Charlie
and
West.
You were there for 10 years.
Yep.
And before that, you were at the Weather Channel.
Yeah, that was... all the tours have been interesting and fun, and if I had to do it all over, I would do it the same way I've done it. But the learning curve at the Weather Channel, especially when I was there, was phenomenal. You're working with guys like John Hope, you got a tropical expert. You're working with guys like Jim Cantori, Jeff Morrow, Vivian Brown, Keith Westerledge, Mark Mancuso. So I was like a sponge, and it was a phenomenal experience.
And that was your first job in weather after college, correct?
Actually, I did 9 months at CNN, which was fun too.
Okay. And where
I interned at the Weather Channel when I was in college up at SUNY Albany. Grew up in New York State, and my junior year, I did an internship with the folks down in Atlanta at the Weather Channel. And at the time, it was not only a paid internship, but I got college credit, so it's a 2-for-1. It was great.
So I would assume, since you're up in New York, that there's some weather event that got you interested in weather, and it probably has to do with snow of some kind.
The blizzard of 77, 78. I'll never forget it. We had 29 inches of snow in my house on Long Island, and we had snow drifts over 6 feet. And I can remember literally having to go on top of my roof to shovel off the snow because everybody was worried about the weight of the snow on our roofs, so we had to shovel it off. And by the time you were done shoveling the snow off, you could jump off your roof into the snow and not without a ladder get hurt. It was amazing.
And I would assume it was somewhat wet snow because
no. The setup, and I'll never forget this, was it did warm up during the storm, but the ground was frozen solid at the start. It wasn't really towards the end. It was as it was moistening up a little bit. We had a little thunder snow that it got a little bit, wetter and heavier in content. But the majority of that storm, the temperatures were in the upper 20s and low 30s. So it wasn't like we would say a late spring storm. It was more of a true winter storm.
Kind of similar to snowstorms we kind of get, like the couple we've had where we just the fluffy type snow. And
yeah, this was a 10-to-1 ratio. This wasn't a 40 or 50.
You don't want to say that word. 10-to-1 ratio. That's a bad word.
Yep.
All you have to do is go back to the episode with John Wetter from the Hop WRF, and he does not like ratios. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's funny. A lot of stories on snow content, snow ratios, and you talk to people up your way versus people off the lakes, and people in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. They have their thoughts, and they'll battle you till the end.
So, did you always want to be in TV weather when you grew up in Long Island?
No, not really. I was gonna do a master's. I was gonna either go to FSU or something like that upon graduation. But when you have a job offer out of college and you find it that you like in your internship the TV component of it, you toss that out, and I enjoyed it. So I elected not to go on for a master's and pursue a broadcast career, and it turned out to be a pretty good decision so far.
So what made you want to go? I'll try to start this again. We'll talk about the time when you were at CNN and at the Weather Channel that time. Your first 2 jobs, we'll say. What was it like working? at those two places compared to Charleston and where you are now in Orlando?
Well, you were talking about the tools in a bigger market, but when you're working when you're working for a national cable company, whether it's CNN or the Weather Channel, you have an abundance of resources. At CNN, they're flying people all over the place. At the Weather Channel, they're flying people all over the place. You're not just going out with one photog and a talent. You're going out with a crew that researches stuff and helps you out. You got satellite truck operators. You've got all these extra elements that you don't have on the daily basis.
So, what was it like at the Weather Channel during? Because you were only at CNN a couple of months. So, why did you end up leaving the CNN to go to the Weather Channel? Was it because Weather Channel it's weather, 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 and CNN is mainly just news and they don't care about the weather? Well,
yeah, actually, I really liked CNN, but the thing that I most liked about the Weather Channel was you had more studios to practice in, and at that time when I was working, I knew that I wanted to get back to the Weather Channel because the opportunity to practice at CNN was there, but there were so many people being brought in to do interviews and stuff like that there were times where you were going in, you had your time slot to practice, but then they had to do these special interviews and you lost your time. At the Weather Channel, it was like you said, all weather, and you had a few more extra studios, so you were pretty much guaranteed to get that studio time, that practice time, whether you're staying late after your shift or if you were coming in on your day off, which is what I did a lot when I was. We worked a 4-3 schedule, 4 10-hour days, 3 days off. I'd come into one of those days off and still have 2 days off. So, to me, that was a no-brainer.
So you were pretty much behind the scenes for most of the time at the Weather Channel.
Say that again?
So you were pretty much most of the time when you were at the Weather Channel a behind-the-scenes person.
That's correct. Yeah, I was I did everything. I did radio, did long-range forecasting, did short-range forecasting, tropical updates. As I said, I worked with John Hope for a number of years before I moved on. And you talk about just an incredible, knowledgeable guy from the Hurricane Center to learn about tropical meteorology. And I mean, today, every time I do my tropical forecast, I use his rules that he would teach me when I was, down at the Weather Channel, or I should say up at the Weather Channel.
So then you can give us what are those rules?
Well, look, if you're talking about steering, at that time we didn't have as much access to what we have to today. But the bottom line was this: you have to look at, steering. You have to look at outflow. The different components of the storm. Is it an El Nino? Is it a La Nina year? What are the sea surface temperatures like? I mean, he would definitely drill you every day because every storm had a different character, a different shape, different possibilities. He'd have me sit in front of a satellite and say, "Hey, Tony, tell me what's going on right now. This quadrant, that quadrant. What do you think is going to happen?" And then he would follow it up by telling me what he thought was going to happen, and it was a great way to learn. And with Jim Cantori, for example, I'd have to run the radar for him a lot. And we would sit there and battle and discuss, what's going on. Obviously, the radar today has changed since when I was there in the early 1990s, but it was just fascinating. You had people up in the Pacific Northwest. They talk about the Puget Sound effect. You got people from California, Thule fog, the June gloom. You would just learn about weather all over the country, whether you were at CNN or the Weather Channel.
So, I'm trying to think of something. So you were there for, 3 years or so?
Yeah, 92 to 95, basically, yeah.
So why did you end up leaving the Weather Channel? Or if we want to not get that far ahead, what were the memorable moments from your time at the Weather Channel, even though you were not on air?
Well, a lot of things. When you were working there or CNN, you have a bunch of extremely driven people, people that care about the product. Keep people that are very good at what they're doing. And what's nice is both of those companies were like melting pots. If you grew up in the Northeast, you wanted to learn about the weather across the Great Lakes. And, you look at guys like Stu Ostro. You look at guys like Tom Moore. Lake effect snow was their big thing, and by the time I left, I knew I could forecast on TV anywhere in the country. And when I got to that comfortable level of forecasting knowledge, I knew it was time to leave because, a guy with no TV experience wasn't going to get on the air at the Weather Channel, especially when I was there in '95 when the changes were starting to just begin back then.
Now, you're leading me into a question I'm thinking Mike would probably lead into. Do you think the changes at the Weather Channel of today is the right direction for the Weather Channel?
That's subjective. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on that. Those guys, I'm sure, look at a lot of different research. The content does change. Obviously, a morning show is going to be much different than an afternoon show, which is going to be much different than an evening show. They're always constantly redeveloping themselves. I don't know if you saw it, guys, but Mike Bettis has got a new show coming out here pretty soon in the evening. They do a phenomenal job with getting out live on location and reporting, whether there's a hurricane coming, a snowstorm, big West Coast storm. They do a great job. Some people might say that they're kind of maybe too much PM magazine-y, and I think at times, that might be true, but the bottom line is this: can you still get the forecast that you need for where you live? And that's what it boils down to.
Well, we've had former Weather Channel people on before, and they have split decisions about how the Weather Channel is right now. So you're pretty much middle of the road right now.
It has changed, but for me, I think the bottom line is this: I get the information that I need from them when I turn them on. Now, if I felt that I wasn't, then I would probably have a different thought about their changes. But for me, I'm still okay with it. And you talk to anybody that's worked at the Weather Channel, and you guys already have. I don't think there's anybody that has worked there that hasn't come away with such an unbelievable weather knowledge about how the country as a whole, weather-wise, works and the different nuances. And there's a huge appreciation that goes into that when you've experienced it. And it may be difficult for someone who hasn't worked there before to understand what I'm saying, but when you're around so many really good forecasters from all different parts of the country, you learn a lot, and you learn a lot quickly. And for me, that's the bottom line.
Mike, do you have a question before I send it to Charleston, where he went after the Weather Channel?
Just the only thing I can think of is just talk a little more about working with John Hope, because when I was watching the Weather Channel back in the early '90s, every time there was a storm, I was fixated upon the Weather Channel because I knew John Hope was going to be there and I knew he'd nail it. Just talk a little more about that, just a little more behind the scenes, if you can, stuff, just to kind of appease the 14-year-old in me.
Well, it's funny. You talk to any meteorologist, and they knew at a pretty young age, Mike, what they wanted to do, and I'm sure you did too. If you're a guy that doesn't want to be in front of the camera and you're looking for a dream job, the Weather Channel is certainly a place that you want to look into. It affords you an unbelievable opportunity to work with specialists in all different types of genres. You look at their people today, who they have: winter experts, severe weather expert, tropical experts. I think most people that are involved in weather, they like any type of weather. It's not just snowstorms, or it's not just hurricanes. Even though I grew up in the Northeast and I grew up with snowstorms, I always loved lightning. Always loved tropical storms. Always loved hurricanes and tornadoes. Even though I've never tornado chased before, shooting video like these guys do today, we went out one or two times and, didn't have as much luck as some of the guys do today with the Doppler on wheels and all the technology we have today. But the behind-the-scenes place, you work there for a couple of years, and you will trust me. By the time you leave that place, you'll be able to forecast for anybody in the United States because you'll learn all the little nuances. It's funny when I talk to people like, "How do you know that county? Well, how do you know what the average low is?" When you work at the Weather Channel and you do short-range forecasting, long-range forecasting, you learn. You learn who the coldest cities are in each state. You learn counties. You learn lakes, rivers. You absorb it. It becomes part of you because it affects how you forecast for the United States. If that makes sense.
So then you finally decided to go into broadcasting for your own and went to Charleston. What made you choose that place than any other place?
That's a great question. Well, Carl Arredondo at the time was one of the morning what we called OCM's on-camera meteorologist, and he was helping me out as well. And he knew the news director up in Clarksburg, West Virginia, a guy by the name of Mike Stafford. And he said, "I want you to send a tape up to Mike." And he had worked with Mike in the past. And 2 weeks later, my broadcasting career was up in Clarksburg, West Virginia. So yeah, it was a neat experience. My salary went to a third of what I was making when I left the Weather Channel. But I knew that in time it would, get back to and then eventually get better to my salary at the Weather Channel. I didn't do it for the money. I did it for that first job. As you guys know, the first TV job is typically the hardest one to get.
As Mike would know. Hint, hint.
Oh, don't even go there. Don't even go there. Moving on.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Mississippi State.
Gotcha. Are you done?
Yeah, well, no, not technically. I've been through all of the meteorology classes. I just have to take all the calculus, which
Yeah.
it's not going to be fun.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting when when I went to SUNY, your first 2 years, of course, you're taking your core classes, you're taking your calculus, as you said, the chemistry and the physics, and it's interesting how you have such a large group of students that freshman year, and then how it shrinks after that first year, because of the difficulty of all the math and science. But once you get past that second year, you're taking your core weather classes, which it's still a lot of math and science, but drastically different.
Yeah, don't talk to me about calculus. I hate calculus.
Differential equations, linear algebra.
I went because I took calculus and I hated it so much, and after I had to quit school, I kept my calculus book all these years, and I still have it. I can turn my camera on for this.
I still have mine too.
There it is.
That's awesome, Jeff.
Wow.
Look at that.
That is awesome.
And that book is 15 years old now. It's 16 years old. It was in 1999. And it's like, I paid for this book. I'm going to do it because this is why I still have student loans. So, but yeah, so you ended up pretty much touring West Virginia for quite a few years. So how bad, like you said earlier, is it to forecast in the mountains of West Virginia?
It's tough because you're in the Kanawha Valley of Charleston. You're at about 960 feet. You're up in Clarksburg, West Virginia, a little bit higher than that. You literally go 50 miles to your east. You know, you're over at Snowshoe, West Virginia. You know, you're up at 4,800 feet, and it's night and day. You know, I can relate to what folks in the Front Range of Denver go through when they're making their forecast. You know, you get these little clipper features that come across, and then you get that flow across the lakes, north to south into the mountains of West Virginia, and it just wrings out that moisture. That's why it's always gray and cloudy in the winter through the Ohio Valley. So that's the other thing you have to deal with, because it's a lot of times when you're new to that area, especially a new forecaster, your temperature highs, you're going to be busting, because you're going to be looking at, you know, the MOS or the NAM and the ADA output, and you're seeing all these numbers, and they're warm, but you know, you've been there a couple of years, you know it's going to be 10 to 15 degrees off.
Mike can relate since he's fairly close to that area. Since he's
you know, you get to eastern Kentucky and eastern Tennessee up towards Gatlinburg, you know, he'll tell you. I mean, it's a lot different than forecasting from Memphis.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It's crazy up here. I'm way up here in the northeast corner, so I'm even farther north than Gatlinburg. And yeah,
are you near Bristol?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you ended up staying there. Was there any memorable moments from your time in West Virginia? Was there even a tornado, the rare tornado or a snowstorm that seemingly happens all the time?
You know, I don't know if this is due to climate change, but there were several tornadoes in West Virginia. The deadliest tornado in West Virginia was the Shinston tornado, and that I believe that was an EF2. I want to say. I'll have to double check that. But it killed a couple of people. We had a tornado on my birthday, June 3rd. I want to say it was 98. 98. I want to say June 3rd, 98. Where it tore. There was about a mile and a half long, narrow path. I think the weather service there in Charleston said the winds were about 100 miles an hour. For that area, that's pretty significant.
So for even back then, in West Virginia, did you go wall to wall with tornado warnings or tornado coverage, given the fact that tornadoes in West Virginia then and now even are still fairly rare?
Yeah, we did actually. If there was a tornado warning, and it's the same thing down here, if there's a tornado warning, we stay on the air until the warning has expired or the threat has gone away. Either or. Sometimes, you know, the tornado warning isn't lifted soon enough, as you guys know. And same thing with a severe thunderstorm warning. Although we don't go on for a severe thunderstorm warning, we'll go on for a tornado warning. But, you know, if there's a severe thunderstorm that is exhibiting, you know, signs of rotation that could be upgraded, you know, we'll go on before the tornado warning comes in.
So then you went to Orlando. Well, how the heck does somebody who's been in West Virginia decide, well, I want to go to Orlando? I would assume, because you mentioned this earlier, you love tropical weather. So I would assume your next job was going to be somewhere where there was going to be tropical weather.
Yeah, that was a part of it, no doubt about that. You know, I met my wife in Charleston. My two kids were born there, and she was a human resources director at the time for AT&T. And AT&T made a decision to outsource the jobs in the Kanawha Valley to India. And at that point, she said, "Well, you know what? I don't want to work. Let me raise the kids, but let's go somewhere warm." And I can distinctly remember asking her, "Well, where do you want to go?" And she said, "Orlando." And I'm like to myself as she's saying this, it's not like I can just pick up the phone and be there 2 weeks later. But it just so happened that there was an opening at WESH, and so I sent a DVD down to, at the time, Ed Trotsky, and you know, 2 weeks later I was down here interviewing, and 2 weeks after that they offered me a job. So it was almost like it was meant to be. It was kind of eerie.
Now, when you came down there, Dave Marsh, who's been there forever,
yep,
had been there, what was it like working with him and getting a lot of the stuff from him? Was it a lot like John Hope was to you at the Weather Channel?
Yeah. I mean, he was very, very helpful to me as the new guy coming in. You know, there were some changes that were ongoing at WESH as I was arriving that he helped me through. You know, when you come to a new area to forecast, there's, you know, obviously a lot of things you want to know. You know, the most difficult thing for us as forecasters down here are those sea breeze thunderstorms, and what time of the day they're going to set up, which way they're going to push. Are they going to have more of a push towards the inland areas, or is the dynamic strong enough to push them towards the west coast or back towards the east coast? So he kind of helped me with that. You know, there are some towns that are, you know, difficult to pronounce if you're a newcomer. He helped me with, you know, the logistics behind that as well. So yeah, Dave was a good guy. He was very helpful, and you know, he was here for over 30 years, so he had a long career. When you are fortunate enough to work with someone that has been in the market for that long, it's good judgment to spend the time with that person to learn from them. So when I was at the Weather Channel, it was the same principle. You know, you were working with people that had been in the business a long time, and the quickest way to do well is to listen and learn, and that's what we did.
So you went down there in, I think it was 2005, right?
That's correct. May 31st, my first day on the year, we had a tropical storm, and they just threw me to the wolves. Never even worked on WSI, but just went there and I ran the Barron's radar and just loved it.
I would assume after that first hurricane season of 2005, you were ready to be sick of tropical weather by that point.
Well, I missed 2004, which was actually worse with Charlie Francis and Gene. I came in after that active year. 2005 was fairly busy too, but obviously not as busy as 2004. And you know, I can go a long time. I mean, I'm a pretty durable guy. I haven't had too many injuries, so to speak, knock on wood. So I was ready to go. I just wanted to get in, make my mark, and let these guys know that I can do this. And so they said, all right, have at it. And then, you know, the big break for me down here as far as getting the promotion was the Groundhog Day tornado outbreak in February of 2007.
Now you can talk about that if you want to.
Well, you know, it was an El Nino year. You know, the biggest tornado outbreak in the history of Florida was the El Nino year of '98, but 2007 was pretty decent, and we had 3 supercells, and it's very rare in the state of Florida to have a tornado on the ground for, you know, more than 15, 20 minutes. You know, we'll get a spin-up sea breeze tornado, you know, in the summer, but in the winter, especially, you know, you start getting in the February and March, you really got to be careful with these digging troughs, and these southern, you know, jet storm systems, you know, with a, you know, 1,000, you know, 999 low that shoots right over I-10 or South Georgia, you know, beginning in February and March. At that point, then, you know, you're going to have issues, and, you know, there's always got to be someone in the weather center. Well, that night, you know, we had a pretty potent storm system coming on in, and I knew it was going to be a busy night. I said, look, I'm going to be here all night. We're going to watch this. We think that there's a, you know, distinct possibility for severe weather and even the risk for tornadoes, and didn't realize I was going to be on the air for, you know, a double shift. But, you know, that's what happens in our business. We had 21 people lost their lives. The big tornado was one that made landfall in Sumter County and went clear over towards Daytona Beach. Went through Lady Lake and Lake Mac, big mobile home park there, and that's where, you know, a lot of people lost their lives.
Now, that's fairly rare, like you said, for tornadoes to go almost completely across the entire peninsula.
Yeah, we had a powerful upper-level jet and low-level jets just screaming off the Gulf, and, you know, water temperatures can play a big role in severe weather. You know, water temperatures right now off our coast are running in the upper 50s to the mid 60s, but you start getting into February, higher sun angle, and you get these, you know, bursts of mid and upper 80 temperatures. That shelf water there can warm up pretty quickly. And once that warms up and then you get these storms coming over it, you know, they can develop rapidly. And that's really a big key. You have to watch that.
Mike, do you have anything?
Actually, I do. Now that I think about it, when I don't know what your first one was, but when it comes to severe weather coverage and tornadoes, what was your first outbreak or just a single tornado or whatever that you covered, where people lost their lives, and how did you handle it the first time?
Well, let me backtrack. When I was in West Virginia, I never went through an event where people had lost their lives. When I was at the Weather Channel, there were several events that we covered. Although I wasn't on the air, I got the experience of watching these guys operate. So I learned a lot from that. That was actually very helpful for me before I got into local TV. You know, what to do, how to communicate, where to send people, and where to send people safely. You know, we have a news chopper. You know, when you have storms coming in February, there's usually a lot of wind. So, you know, pilots, especially helicopter pilots, you know, they have thresholds. So I always talk to my pilots and let them know what's going on. Storms move very quickly down here in February and March. You know, so you gotta watch. You gotta watch that for your guys. If you're thinking ahead and you're trying to decide, hey, let's put the chopper up in the air to cover severe weather. We don't do that like the planes, just because when we get our severe weather, it's more, you got a lot of speed shear. You got a lot of that going on. Whereas in the summer, you get the sea breeze storms. That might be a little bit safer, but you don't get those long-lived tornadoes where you can set a chopper up 10 miles out and video it and zoom in. You know, it's a little bit different. And for us, in Florida, a lot of times severe weather occurs at night in February and March, not so much during the day. And the Groundhog Day tornado outbreak actually occurred at night, you know, right around 2:30 in the morning to right through about sun up, 8, 9 o'clock. And I can remember when I was on the air, Raul Martinez, who was a co-anchor with me, who's now out in San Diego, we sent him out live, and I told him, I said, you know what, Raul, at first light, there's going to be some pretty significant damage in Lake County. And lo and behold, when he got there, it was still dark. And it was amazing what it looked like when first light came up, and then we had the chopper up during the mid-morning hours just to show the swaths of damage and these mobile home parks that were obliterated. You know, I went to Tuscaloosa to cover the storms after that whole thing happened, and that was pretty significant. And the overall vast coverage was much greater than what we had here. But in that one area, the scenes were very similar to the damage in many extents that what we saw in that big outbreak in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham. So it was amazing.
Now, when you have most of these severe weather events in winter, now you had these supercells, but most of the time it's just this big, huge squall line that just sweeps across. It comes and goes within, say, about 2-3 hours, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And that, I would assume, is where you could get the spin-up tornadoes, or whatever.
Right. Along the line, echo wave patterns, you can get those. But actually, in this case, this was a what I call a road runner. In other words, it was way out ahead of the cold front. So it was individual. It was very easy to pick up on the Tampa Bay radar. I can remember distinctly using the Baron product called the Baron Button, and you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with it. It had winds of 170 miles an hour on that one supercell, and I'm like, my God, never seen this down here. And in that area, it was spot on. That's where the damage was, and that's why I told Raul, because I backed up the loop on the air. I said, look, I'm circling this area, and this is where you're going to be in an hour and a half, 2 hours from now, reporting live, showing me the devastation. And he got there, even before he got on, he says, Tony, you are not going to believe what this place looks like. It looks like a bomb was dropped here. And then we had this little secondary max, near Daytona, just south of Daytona, that did some considerable damage, but not as bad as the first cell there in Lake and Sumter County.
Now, you were, like you said, went up to Tuscaloosa and saw the damage there, and you did compare it to what was seen with those tornadoes. Was that what you would consider the worst damage you had ever seen, even in a hurricane? Was the Tuscaloosa tornado, was there any hurricanes worse?
Well, I tell you what, I did get to go down to see the damage in Homestead when Andrew came on through, and they were very, very comparable. Things were obliterated in both places. It was almost like slits, though, when you look at the Tuscaloosa swath of damage versus what Andrew. When you were with Andrew's eye wall, that path, it was much wider and much more destructive. But neither one is a place you'd want to be. I mean, you guys know that.
So then, has there been any memorable hurricanes and tropical systems since you've been down there that have affected Central Florida?
Oh God, yeah. Faye was amazing. The amount of rain that we got with Faye was incredible. 25 to 35 inches of rain along the east side of our peninsula. Very similar to what folks in Houston were dealing with Allison. Although the winds there, I believe, were just a little bit stronger than with Faye.
Was there any others?
I've been pretty fortunate since I came down here. We really haven't. The coolest thing that I've done, is flew up in a Hurricane Hunter plane. I flew up with Senator Nelson into Wilma, and when we flew into Wilma, it was a Category 5 hurricane. And when you punched that high wall, I'll never forget that. There was a thrust down, obviously, from a downdraft, so we had to shoot back up real quick, and it was kind of like being on a roller coaster. But then once we were in that beautiful eye, man, I'm telling you, that stadium effect was just flat out incredible. I wish I had an iPhone back then. It was 2005, and I would have blasted tons of pictures had I had that iPhone. But the stadium effect, amazing. Looking down at the ocean with those 50-foot seas, in the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, it was just unbelievable to be in that and to experience that. But Wilma missed us. Faye was a big tropical storm. I had a couple of near misses, but no Charlie, Francis, or Gene since I've been here. So they probably want to keep me around. Probably calling me their good luck charm.
Yeah, and then something will happen, and then they'll get rid of you. But
well, yeah, I got to tell you what, guys, we're due. You do the math. Yeah. 2004 to now, there's the hurricane rate of return frequency for Central Florida is about once every 9 to 11 years. So we're there.
Does that worry you, given the fact that there's a lot more people, newbies that have moved down to Central Florida?
Oh yeah, definitely. We do a lot of hurricane seminars, and that's helpful. And we put our hurricane show, which by the way won an Emmy this past year, guys. We put it online, and we point our web traffic to it. We want people to get educated. We don't want any hurricane parties. We want people to take this seriously. And I tell you what, this new product that the Hurricane Center is putting out, the storm surge probabilities and the maps, it's going to be a huge help for us, especially with sending the message to folks, seeing, look, here comes a Category 3 storm. This is where we're expecting the water to be this high. I think that visual is gonna go a long way. At least I'm hoping anyway. Go a long way in showing the serious nature of what could be coming our way down the road.
Now, where do you expect, if you have a major hurricane, to be where the worst would? I'll try to get this out. Where do you think in the area of Central Florida, where do you think the worst place a hurricane could hit? Does it really matter if it's Melbourne or Daytona Beach or wherever? What would be like the worst case scenario, or is there even it's worst case for everybody?
Well, every storm is different. You take a look at the Charlie storm, people would say, well, what's the threat to Disney? And they did okay. A storm coming into Tampa Bay, obviously never a good thing. You got the bay waters that would come up into all the tributaries. We don't have a whole lot of rivers in our viewing area. We've got the St. Johns River, so we'd have to watch that. But that's far enough inland away from the coast. That's not going to be a major deal. It'd be more, the Ponce Inlet, these little inlet areas where water would come in from the Atlantic with that surge that would be a problem. My thought process wouldn't so much be trying to pinpoint one area. I think that the theme has got to be consistent for everybody, because then I think you run into people maybe feeling safer in one area versus another. Me personally, I don't want to send that message. I want everybody, to get the same message. Look, this is important. You got this coming in perpendicular. This dune, this area, this swath of land. I want to treat it the same. I don't want to say that one area is more favored than the other. I want everybody to kind of get the same message, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Even though the threats would be slightly different from, say, Daytona Beach to, say, Orlando. True,
correct, absolutely.
Unless you live in a flood-prone area of Orlando.
Yeah, well, we have some flood-prone areas inland. We get big, heavy rainstorms in the summer. Remember, you guys might not realize this. We get a summer thunderstorm, and we can get 5 to 8 inches of rain in 4 hours, guys. And so we've got some areas in Volusia County that are well enough inland. You get that kind of rain, and we're doing a story how they've been flooded out. So, and the folks that live here, they get that part of it. They understand how the weather works, when it comes to those summer torrential downpours. We had numerous afternoons this summer, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 lightning strikes in a 3-4 hour window.
And does that, with summertime thunderstorms, are they, as a lot of people have said, so hard to forecast? They're coming, but you don't know if you'll have one thunderstorm that may only dump like 2 inches of rain, but this one storm will dump 5.
Correct. Yeah, it is hard. We know when there is going to be a sea breeze collision. We just have to try to figure out, when the collision is going to be, and you could kind of tell where it's going to be by 2:30 in the afternoon on the early sea breezes, and then in the evening, you might go to 6 o'clock, sun's going, starting to come down, things are quiet. By 7 o'clock, bam. You had the 7 o'clock sea breeze collision, or got a late collision, and you've got thunder and lightning through 12, 1 o'clock at night with incredible lightning shows at night because it's so tropical.
But then I'm surprised you don't have gray hair yet.
I have a little bit.
Yeah, I think he'll be a spokesman for Just for Men in about 2 years. The first hurricane, because the thing that worries me is, going back to the hurricanes, that I think when you don't have a hurricane for a long period of time, and I think the Gulf Coast has the same problem as Central Florida, you get complacent. And people, there's a lot of people that didn't live through all these hurricanes, and I'm thinking it's like oh gosh, well, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but it's almost like a bomb waiting to go off,
Yeah.
and you just and I know a lot of people in markets like yours and others are doing these, but I'm starting to wonder if it's almost like severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, that they don't take it seriously. I'm thinking Florida they do, but I'm starting to think, do other places not take it as serious?
Well, I give kudos to Florida, and I'll tell you what, Craig Fugate, before he left, he was outstanding at what he did. He got on the horn. He prepared people fairly well, and there's a reason why he's now working for the federal government, because he was very good at what he did down here in the state of Florida. I think Florida is better prepared than most states. Building codes are better here, especially after Andrew. They've kind of worked around that, and the people that live here, you know, they take it seriously. You know, the two groups that we have to watch. You hit upon this earlier, Jeff. Number one are the newcomers. It's a very transient area in the Orlando area because of the tourism industry here. But the other group of folks that we have to kind of watch carefully are the folks that, you know, retired. They're a little bit more stubborn. They want to stay with their property, and I get that, but we got to watch them too.
Do you also worry about people who are non-English speakers?
Yes and no. There are a lot of bilingual speakers down here, and so they'll get their information. You know, we have Telemundo here. Telemundo does a good job, and you know, they have you know, the forecasters over there as well. So I think we're okay from that standpoint. I don't think there's a language barrier just yet.
Where do you see the future lying in television meteorology?
Well, it's fascinating how the technology changes so much. You know, you change your computer now every 2 to 3 years because an i2 is outdated. You get an i7 2 to 3 years from now. Who knows what they're going to have? Same thing with the iPhones. The broadcast technology is incredible. The things that we're doing today, you know, to make our jobs easier. A lot of things are automated now, but you got to be careful about that. You know, you always want to make your own forecast before you look at all the automated stuff. That's what I tell my you know, my fellow forecasters is, you know, don't fall in love with your forecast. Don't wishcast. You know, make your own forecast before looking at any other person's or station's forecast, because then you'll be biased. So.
And is that something you've always learned going back?
I learned that at the Weather Channel. You know, guys like Stu Ostro, they pretty much ingrained that in your head. Stu was a great forecaster. Lance Bozart, one of my professors up at SUNY Albany, he was a fantastic teacher. You know, he drilled us. Mike Landon, another forecaster up there at SUNY Albany. You know, I had some good teachers along the way, so I've been very, very fortunate, and you know, you pay it back. You know, we have our interns that come in here every summer, and a few of them now are working in the biz, so you pay it back.
Now I'm kind of going back. Now talk about SUNY Albany and how the meteorology program was there.
You know, at the time, I didn't realize how good it was until I left. All the stuff that I learned there, you know, paid off because it helped me get my internship at the Weather Channel. You know, when I was applying for that internship, I had to take a test, and I didn't know that, but I guess I passed it, and you know, and I credit that to the foundation that was brought upon me up at SUNY Albany. You know, you look at the other programs, especially when you're at a place like CNN or the Weather Channel, the other weather programs, and you know, you compare and contrast. Hey, what did you guys do at your school? What did you do at your school? And for the most part, they were similar. But you know, the whole forecasting schematics, the contests, you know, every school is different. You know, Penn State, you know, is different from Oklahoma University, which is different from Washington State, which is different from FSU. So, you know, I think, you know, the storms in Oklahoma and Florida are more geared towards storm chasing and the tropics with broadcasting. Schools up in the Northeast, the Ohio Valley, and the Pacific Northwest are more synoptic, more, day-to-day forecasting. But it's what you put into it is what you get out of it. It's as simple as that.
Now, do you see yourself staying in TV for 30 years more?
I really like it here. I like what I do. I think Hearst is a very well-run company. Don't have any complaints. I've had offers to go elsewhere, but
I want to hear those.
What's that?
We want to hear those.
We'll do those off camera.
Oh, I'm sure. I think they were all in cold climates. Like Anchorage, Alaska.
What? I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think he wanted to go. The only place I think he'd want to go is Honolulu.
Our former executive producer is now an assistant news director at our Hearst station out there.
Yeah, see, he'll end up there.
The cost of living out there is very high. So I don't know. It's got to be worth it.
But then the interesting thing about it is Hawaii has had what? They've had blizzard warnings up in the volcanoes.
Yep.
They've had 2 tropical systems last year. They had more weather excitement than Central Florida.
That's okay.
Because I think that's what a lot of people in Hawaii would say. Well, Hawaii doesn't get anything. You guys know things tend to balance themselves out. So. Like I said, we're on borrowed time down here in Florida. So now this is something I was thinking about with Central Florida, because weather's like number 1 because of the citrus industry, and a lot of industry that grows crops that have to not have a freeze. So. Do you work with, or does anybody around there work with the agriculture industry to make sure that, for example, with cold waves coming down, that they get their sprinklers out to ice down their fruit trees and whatnot?
The weather today, you can get it from so many different places. It's very sophisticated. But yeah, they watch us, and we'll communicate with them from time to time. But they make their decisions based upon what they feel their needs are. If there's going to be if we're under a freeze warning, then the sprinklers are going off and they're watering to build up that ice to protect the citrus, the strawberries, the tropical plants, and all that stuff. Hibiscus, just to mention a few.
Mike, do you have anything?
Not really. Believe it or not, I've been sitting here thinking of questions, and then you answer them before I get to them, or you ask them, and then it's just all of my questions are being answered. Is what I'm trying to say. So I haven't got anything else yet.
Okay, I'll ask one. I'll put Tony on the spot. Of the people that still work at the Weather Channel that you worked with, even though you were not on camera, who is the one you could get along with the most, or get along with the best? And you could even take somebody like that who isn't there anymore.
Yeah, they were all very, very helpful. I played softball with Jim Cantori. We were on a team together down there. Bruce Kalawowski, who's now up in Cleveland, he was pretty helpful. Carl Arredondo, who's now at WWL in New Orleans, was very helpful. Keith Westerledge, who's still up in Atlanta. Declan Cannon, who's a forecaster behind the scenes now up in D.C. All those guys are. Vivian Brown, Jill Brown, they were all very, very helpful. But they were. There was, if I were to pick out anybody, I really can't. I don't have a favorite. I mean, I keep in touch with a good chunk of those folks that I work with, and to this day we still keep in touch. Mike Seidel, Jeff Morrow, all of those folks. They were very, very helpful. If I had a question, or if I wanted them to come in and work with me, it wasn't like I was picking teeth. They were just like, all right, let's do it.
Now, I'll say this, because the Weather Channel is pretty much owned partially by NBC, and you are an NBC affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
do you have connections with the Weather Channel that way, even though you used to work there?
You know, we will always work with NBC. I mean, that's because we're an NBC affiliate down here. I don't have any connections. Have I done live shots from Orlando to the Weather Channel with Chris Warren? Yeah, a couple of times.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
But you know, not so much per se. It doesn't go any further than that. I mean, I don't. I think I've answered your question, unless I'm missing the point here.
No, I was seeing, because they, with NBC trying to work, having their affiliates work with that and whatnot. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, you know, they used to do it a whole lot more. You know, like when Al Roker was down here, he and I did weather from Universal Orlando, which is owned by NBC Universal. We've done that a couple of times, but ever since Comcast has taken over, I think you're seeing less of that. They're using more internal folks as opposed to external folks, if that makes sense.
Yes. So now, oh, I got one. If the Weather Channel called tomorrow, which wouldn't be on a Saturday, so if they called on Monday and said they were going to give you an on-air job, would you go?
It's interesting, but again, you'd have to sit down and weigh what kind of offer they're giving.
Or was that one of the offers you didn't take?
What's that?
Or was that one of the offers you didn't take?
No, they have never offered me a job. I can tell you that straight up. So, but yeah, look, you guys know, anytime you're dealing with a media conglomerate, you know, you have agents involved and lawyers involved, and it typically takes a little bit of time. I don't, especially when you're in a bigger market. It doesn't it's not done in 2 seconds. You sit down, you throw offers, counter offers back at each other, and you hope to come to a nice medium, and you know, hopefully both parties come away thinking they've done well. That's typically the way negotiations go.
So you've been on with us over an hour, so and you're probably having to get busy for your evening newscast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sirs.
Yeah. So you're just gonna forecast 70 degrees and leave us freezing.
Well, you know, we've got the Disney half tomorrow morning, and we've got runners that are liking temperatures in the 45-degree range. So they're happy. I'm happy.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run a marathon up here unless you want to run a marathon in a drifts of snow.
Yeah. That doesn't work for me. I'm not a long distance guy. I'll do my 2 to 3, maybe 4 miles, and calling it a day.
Yeah, well, and shorts, and I'm in double layers right now. So, Tony, how can people get a hold of you?
I am on Facebook at Team Analfi Wesh, on Twitter Team Analfi Wesh, Google, of course, with you guys, Google Plus, Team Analfi, and yeah, get me there. Or go to wesh.com.
Yeah, well, he'll just go to Wesh and you'll find it.
Yeah, that's probably the best way, because then you'll see all the. You just click on the link and
look for the guy that's the Just for Men spokesman.
There you go, Mike. I expect to hear from you.
All right, you'll hear from me for sure.
Okay,
right, guys, thanks for your time. I appreciate it talking with you guys.
Hey, thanks, Tony.
Good talking with you too.
Take care. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year to you too.
So that's our show this week. Next week we have Lisa Spencer from WSMV in Nashville. That'll be our guest next week. And then the week after that is Chad Sandwell, who I just booked 2 days ago, from KMEG in Sioux City. We also have Fred Gossage on February 19th. That's a Thursday show from WBRC in Birmingham. I'm fairly close to getting a couple of other guests on that could be coming up in February, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, if we have nothing else, Mike, we can sign off for the night. Do we have anything else?
Are you doing shout-out? Do you have a shout-out?
Oh, yeah, we have to do shout-outs, and I didn't make Tony do one. Darn, too bad, Tony.
Oh, no.
Oh,
well.
I think Tony's shout-out will be just for men hair coloring.
Oh, Jeff, that's not right, man. I guess I'll do mine first. Tony was talking about working at the Weather Channel, and that was back during the day when I watched the Weather Channel a lot, and I used to enjoy the local forecast music on the Weather Channel. And about a year and a half ago, I found one of the songs thanks to the website twcclassics.com, which has a bunch of old Weather Channel stuff on it, including all of the old, a lot of the old weather forecasts and stuff. And found one of the songs that as soon as I heard it, I remembered it. So my shout out is going to be a song by, I guess you'd call it a song. There's no singing, but it's a song from the Rippingtons called Weekend in Monaco. Go Google it, Weekend in Monaco, and listen to it. It's a good little jazzy type tune they used to play on the local forecast music on the Weather Channel back when Tony was there. So
yeah.
when he talked about being at the Weather Channel in the early 90s, I thought of that. So that's my shout.
I would note that a lot of those songs you can actually get on YouTube.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I thought when I first got the Weather Channel here was in '94, and in '95, in the '95 year of that big hurricane season, I'd always watch in '95. That was the year I remember the Weather Channel had Trammell Starks doing all the songs. It was like he was the only person doing all their songs. So it's like, oh, those are the songs that I remember most, was Trammell Starks, but that's not my shout-out. I will mention that this will be sort of a shout-out that we are at the Iowa Weather Network, where myself and Henry works with other people, that we're in the middle of redoing a bunch of stuff, so I'll shout that out partially. And then I'm going to shout out my leaking bathroom sink because it's not frozen. But that, and I'll shout out, gosh, what else should I shout out? There was some stuff about AMS, the AMS annual meeting that was this week. A lot of stuff, so you could go to the hashtag AMS15 and you get a lot of the stuff that occurred out in Phoenix this past week. A lot of good stuff that came out of that meeting, I might add. So, otherwise, I think we're done for tonight.
Yep, I think we are.
Okay, so next week should be at our normal time. It's 8 Eastern, 7 Central with Lisa Spencer. Unless that changes, we'll let you know. Otherwise, I'm Jeff, and he's Mike, and we're going to have a great weekend. I hope you do too. Stay warm, and God bless.